Hello, good morning, and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu Newspaper, and these are the 5 topics that we shall be discussing today. After the discussion is over, jump to our official Telegram channel and take the quiz based on these 5 topics. The link to join the Telegram channel is provided in the video description. Let's get started, but first, like this video. And let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu Newspaper, beginning with a news editorial on page number 6 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu, relevant for GS Paper 2. Close to 4,000 families are residing in an area known as Gafur Basti, which is in Haldwani town of Uttarakhand state. The state is claiming that this land belongs to railways. These 4,000 families are encroachers. Basically, they have encroached upon the railway land, and that is why they should be evicted from this land, because they are not the legitimate owners of this land. Matter went to the Uttarakhand High Court. Uttarakhand High Court ordered the eviction of these 4,000 families, that too in 1 week. Uttarakhand High Court said if necessary, force should also be used. If necessary, paramilitary troops should also be used. Now these 4,000 families, they approached the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court of India on 4th of January this year stayed the eviction of these 4,000 families. And that is what this editorial says is a timely halt. It's a timely halt on the eviction of these 4,000 families from Gafur Basti, which is in Haldwani area, town of Uttarakhand state. But the Supreme Court made 2 very important observations. What is it that you have to understand from this topic for your civil services examination? Number 1, Supreme Court of India made 2 very important observations. Supreme Court said, number 1, there can be no eviction without rehabilitation, which means the Supreme Court is insisting on rehabilitating these 4,000 families, number 1. Number 2, the Supreme Court said these people are residing in this area, whether this area belongs to them or it is belonging to the railways, but they have been residing in this area for many years. And the Uttarakhand High Court order that eviction should take place in 1 week. This 1 week limit imposed by Uttarakhand High Court is draconian. That is why the Supreme Court, keeping in mind these 2 observations, number 1, there can be no eviction without rehabilitation, and number 2, this time limit of 1 week within which the eviction should complete, this time period is draconian, and that is why Supreme Court halted the eviction. But something else as well. Recently, the Supreme Court of Kenya and the Supreme Court of South Africa, they have given landmark judgments, landmark verdicts on this similar issue. What these 2 Supreme Courts have said, listen to me carefully. There are people who belong to weaker sections of the society, marginalized communities, disadvantaged sections of the society. They don't have shelter. So what do? They occupy the public space. They occupy the public land. Now, what you call encroachment, what you call and who you call encroachers, this is nothing but the failure of the state in discharging its constitutional duty of providing housing, shelter, accommodation to its citizens. So if there are people who are occupying public land, you can call them encroachers, you can call all these encroachments, but this is not only encroachment, this is the failure of the state in discharging its constitutional obligation, which is to provide shelter, accommodation and housing to the citizens. So these people who belong to weaker sections of the society, they have nowhere to go because they don't have access to residence, they don't have access to housing. That is why they occupy the public land. So this is basically the failure of the state in discharging its constitutional duty. Both these Supreme Courts of Kenya as well as South Africa, they have been insisting on two things. Number one, rehabilitation, and number two, meaningful engagement. Basically, what the Supreme Court of Kenya and South Africa have said, if there are encroachments, now all people who have encroached this public land, they may not be needy. So what we have to do, we have to identify those who are needy, who belong to the backward sections of the society, and we need to rehabilitate them. And we have to engage with them meaningfully, with dignity, because right to dignity is their fundamental right. We have to engage with them meaningfully, with dignity, and offer them separate, alternate accommodation. That is how we can solve this problem of encroachments. The Supreme Court of India also in numerous judgments have said that when it comes to these encroachments, that does not give the legal right to these encroachers to occupy this land. Because if this is the land which belongs to the state, you cannot claim ownership on this piece of land. But even then, you also have a fundamental right, which is fundamental right to shelter, which is fundamental right to housing. And maybe you are using that public land to also carry out your livelihood opportunities, to carry on with your trade. And right to livelihood is also a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. So what the Supreme Court of India has basically said in numerous verdicts, that even if there are encroachments, that doesn't give the legitimate right to these encroachers to claim ownership on this piece of land. But even then, you're using this land as your accommodation, using this land to carry on with your livelihood opportunities. Right to housing, right to shelter is a fundamental right under Article 21. Right to livelihood is a fundamental right under Article 21. So basically, the Supreme Court is asking the state to rehabilitate and at the same time meaningfully engage with these encroachers. And that is what this editorial also says. Supreme Court must lay down rehabilitation norms for eviction from public spaces. But there are others also who say, if the courts are insisting on rehabilitation, it gives opportunity, incentive for people to encroach. Because if I know I am encroaching upon a public space, and tomorrow the Supreme Court will say, first you have to rehabilitate me, then you can evict me from the public space. That would basically incentivize me to encroach upon a public space, because later on I will be accommodated, I will be given accommodation. That is another key issue that this judgment raises. But at the same time, there are two things that you have to keep in mind, or two areas of concern. One, for example, this is a mall constructed by a wealthy individual. Next to this mall, there is a piece of land. This owner encroaches upon this public land out of his greed. So there is a greed involved. But when there are people belonging to the weaker, marginalized, disadvantaged sections of the society, they encroach upon a public land, not because of greed, but because they have nowhere to go. Because the state has failed to discharge its constitutional obligation, which is to provide shelter, accommodation to these vulnerable sections of the society. That is something that you need to understand from this editorial, a timely halt written in today's The Hindu Newspaper on page number 6, relevant for GS paper 2. Now let's look at another column on the same page number 6, a lead article today, avoid further delay in conducting the census. The census exercise was carried out in India for the first time in 1881. But listen to me carefully. Prior to 1881 also, census exercise would be carried out. But it was carried out in a particular city or group of cities, group of places, but not in the entire country. The first full-fledged, throughout the country census exercise was carried out in the year 1881, and since then, the census exercise is carried out every decade, every 10 years. And who conducts this census exercise? the Registrar General and Census Commissioner. And this office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. These are important facts, can be relevant for your prelims examination. Census exercise in India is carried out under the provisions of the Census Act of 1948, also the census rules of 1990. So what are we discussing as of now? This column, this lead article, avoid further delay in conducting the census. Census exercise every decade is carried out in this country since 1881. Prior to that also census was carried out, but in some cities or in a group of cities, not in the entire country. The first full-fledged census was conducted in 1881, and since then it is conducted every 10 years. Who conducts this? Office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner, which comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And the census exercise is carried out in India under the Census Act of 1948, which is a pre-constitutional law, and the census rules of 1990. The census was to be conducted in 2021 because it is conducted every 10 years. But the census of 2021 was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And now this lead article talks about that it should be now conducted without further delay. Why and why not? Let's have an understanding. Census is basically conducted in two phases. One is house listing and housing census. The second is basically the population census. In first phase, house listing, basically all the buildings are identified. And then within 6 to 8 months of identification of all the buildings, then the population census is conducted. This population census basically conducts and collects details such as what is your age, what is your gender, what is your religion, are you from SC or ST community, the status of migration, the economic activity that you are indulging in, mother tongue, educational level, and for females, fertility for females. This data is also captured. So lots and lots of data is captured during this population census, during this decadal exercise which is carried out every decade. And all this data is basically confidential. And that is why the column says we need no further delay in conducting the census. Why? Reason number one, if you look at the Constitution of United States or the laws related to census in Japan, they basically tell us the period, they basically tell us the year, they basically tell us in what periodicity census exercise should be carried out. But in India, be it the Census Act of 1948, be it the census rules of 1990, according to the author, they don't specifically mention the periodicity within which the census exercise should be carried out. That's problem number one. Problem number two, Constitution says that after every census there should be delimitation. That means redrawal of the electoral constituencies, the territorial boundaries of the constituencies. One important criteria for delimitation is population. Population is not the only criteria, but one important criteria is population. As the population increases, the number of seats in Legislative Assembly, the number of seats in Lok Sabha will also increase. But the year was 1976 when the states protested. And this is what led to a Constitutional Amendment Act. 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was passed in the year 1976, which said there can be no increase in the number of seats, whether to Legislative Assembly or to Lok Sabha, till the census after 2026. That means the number of seats are frozen for 50 years. From 1976 till 2026, the number of seats to Lok Sabha and the Legislative Assemblies cannot be increased. Which means the next time the seats can be increased will be based on the census of 2031. That means 2031 census will form the basis of the increase in the number of seats for Legislative Assembly and for Lok Sabha. But the immediate census before 2031 is the current census, which should not be delayed. That's reason number 2. Reason number 3, there are seats reserved for SCs and STs in Panchayati Raj institutions, in municipalities which were given constitutional status by 73rd and 74th Amendment. Based upon your proportion of population, those many seats shall be reserved for SCs and STs. Which means unless and until we know the population of SCs and STs in proportion to their population, we cannot provide them reservation in Panchayati Raj and municipalities. Which means even today, we are providing seats, reserving seats for SCs and STs in Panchayati Raj institutions and municipalities for SCs and STs, but based on the previous census of 2011. That is why the column says there should be no further delay in conducting the census. Why? Because that data is used to basically provide reservation in proportion to their population for the members belonging to SC and ST community. That's why it should not be delayed. Reason number 4, COVID-19 pandemic struck the world, struck India as well. And now we have a dispute as to what is the exact number of people who lost their lives because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because of this irritating virus. We don't have the numbers, but this column says, if we can have the population figures, we will compare this population figure with the population figure of 2011, which basically will tell us whether adults and people of a particular age died in large numbers than children. So based on the population density of some affected areas, we can also look at and we can also conclusively agree as to the number of people who might have died because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is why this census of 2021 should not be further delayed. That is what this column, avoid further delay in conducting the census, is all about. It also talks about one more thing, which is NPR, National Population Register. National Population Register deals with all the usual residents of India. Who are the usual residents of India? They can be citizens, they can be foreigners as well, aliens as well. For example, NRC, National Register of Citizens, it contains details of only the Indian citizens. But when it comes to NPR, National Population Register, it contains details of all the usual residents. Who are these usual residents? Who are staying in India or who want to stay in India for 6 months or more. All those residents of India, residents can be citizens or foreigners, those who are staying in India for 6 months or those who want to stay in India for 6 or more months, they are the usual residents. And it is mandatory for all these usual residents to enroll under the National Population Register. But the NPR, which was first conducted in 2010, when UPA government was in the power, it was updated in 2015. It was again meant to be conducted in 2020-21. But at that time, it generated a lot of political controversy. Why? Because NPR details also talked about what is your place of birth, what is your date of birth, what is the citizenship criteria of your father, mother, what is your Aadhaar number. Basically, all these details were to be given by the people when NPR was to be conducted. And this NPR was sought to be conducted together with the census exercise. It generated a lot of controversy because at that time some political parties, some state governments, for example Kerala, for example Bihar, for example West Bengal, also Telangana, they said we will not conduct NPR like this. Because you are not conducting NPR, you are basically conducting NRC. Through this process, if you are conducting NPR, where you are asking people to tell us what is your date of birth, what is your place of birth as well, what is the citizenship status of your parents, what is your Aadhaar, you are basically differentiating or categorizing people into citizens and foreigners. So you are basically doing NRC in disguise. That is why we will not allow NPR to be conducted in this fashion. And that is what this column talks about. This very, very political process should be delinked from census exercise. NPR should be separate, it should not be clubbed with the census exercise. That's what you need to know regarding this column. Avoid further delay in conducting the census. Clear? Okay. Now let's look at another important article. Can foreign universities set up campuses in India or not? If we look at the new national education policy, it basically said we will encourage foreign universities to set up campuses in India. What we will do, the new national education policy said, we will establish a legislative framework through which we will allow top 100 universities of the world. If they want, they can come to India, establish foreign campuses in India. Now what the UGC has done, University Grants Commission has done, it has released a draft and it is inviting suggestions from the people as well about this draft. And what is the draft saying? That top 500 universities of the world, they can come to India and establish foreign campus in India. Number one. If they are not part of the top 500 universities of the world, but even if there is a university which is a reputed university in its country, it can also come to India and establish a foreign campus in India. And what we will do, we will give them autonomy. In a sense, what is the admission criteria in these universities that they will decide, we will not interfere. What is the fee that they are going to charge, they will decide, we will not interfere. Basically suggesting that maybe the caste-based reservation that we have for SCs, STs, OBCs in educational institutions, maybe that reservation will not apply to these foreign campuses. Maybe the reservation that we have in recruiting teachers to state universities, to government universities, maybe those restrictions will not apply to these foreign campuses. And at the same time, if there is a foreign university establishing a campus in India, whatever proceeds, whatever money they are generating, they can also transfer this money back to their original country as well, back to their original university as well. This draft has been released. Now, whether you agree with this proposal, you disagree with this proposal, let's have a discussion. But what is the context? The new national educational policy, it basically said we will provide legislative framework in ensuring that top 100 universities of the world, they are allowed to establish campuses in India. UGC draft says we will allow 500 or we will allow top 500 universities of the world to come to India, establish campus in India, and they will be given autonomy. How you recruit, whom you recruit, what is the admission criteria, what is the fee structure, that you decide, we will not interfere. But at the same time, you cannot teach some topics, you cannot teach some subjects which are detrimental to the interests of India, which are detrimental to the sovereignty and integrity of India. That we will not allow. But we can even allow you whatever profit you are generating from these foreign campuses in India, you can transfer some of that profit back to your original university as well. Now, do you agree with this proposal or do you disagree? Those who agree with this proposal, they say, look at the flight of people from India to foreign universities. And basically it leads to dollar migration. Basically it leads to loss of foreign exchange. So if we are allowing foreign universities to establish campuses in India, that means Indians will not travel to foreign countries for their education. They will get top quality, top notch education in India from these foreign countries. And basically it will not lead to violation, or it will not lead to the migration of dollars from India to other countries. And at the same time, it will provide employment opportunities. It will make India the hub of foreign education, which means people from other countries, they may also come to India and study in India. So India is going to achieve its position back. So the ancient Indian position, where Takshila, Nalanda universities were there in India, where students from different parts of the world would come to India to study. India was the hub of good quality education in ancient India. We are going to go back to that prestige point again, if we allow foreign universities to come and establish campuses in India. But there are others who criticize this. One such individual is Professor Pratap Banu Mehta, who has written a very interesting critique of this proposal in today's Indian Express as well. What Dr. Pratap Banu Mehta argues, he asks, there are universities such as Princeton, Stanford, Yale, Oxford, top tier universities of the world. They do not have foreign campuses anywhere in the world. Not even in those countries where they can be given unlimited autonomy, unlimited freedom to teach anything that they want to teach. They don't establish foreign campuses. So if these top tier universities such as Princeton, Stanford, Yale, Oxford, if they have not established foreign campuses in other countries where they are given more independence and autonomy, why would they come and establish foreign campus in India? That's number one. Number two, Pratap Banu Mehta says that there are basically 400 foreign campuses in the world. That means there are 400 universities which have established foreign campuses in different parts of the world. There can be a university in Australia, in England, in United States, which have established foreign campuses in different parts of the world. And Pratap Banu Mehta argues that majority of these organizations, universities, they are not top tier universities. They are not top tier colleges. Majority of them are mediocre or ordinary colleges and universities, with the exception of New York University, Abu Dhabi, which is a foreign campus of New York University in Abu Dhabi. This is considered to be the best foreign campus of a top tier university anywhere in the world. But majority of these 400 foreign campuses, they are of mediocre, low level institutes. They are not from top tier institutes. So if it has not happened in the past, how can it happen for India? That's issue number two. Issue number three, when there are foreign countries and their universities which establish foreign campus in another country, this country provides subsidy to these foreign campuses, provides subsidy to these foreign universities. So if there is an American university establishing a campus in Abu Dhabi, the state of Abu Dhabi is subsidizing that foreign university. Can we then expect that in India, if we are allowing foreign universities to establish campus in India, we are going to use public money, your money and my money, to subsidize these campuses of foreign universities? That's issue number 3. Because otherwise, without this subsidy, they will not come to India. So basically, you will have to subsidize them using public money. Then they will come to India and establish foreign campus. Issue number 4. And this is where we need to understand the link between teaching and research. Now listen to me carefully. Teaching and research. Pratap Banu Mehta argues that majority of the money which is raised by a university is injected into research. That's how this university can become a better institute, an elite institute, a top institute. But according to UGC draft rules, what are you saying? Some of the money that can be generated by these foreign campuses can be transported back to their original university, which means you are encouraging those universities in India whose ultimate option, ultimate objective is profit making. They will earn money from India, but they will not inject this money into research activities. They will then transport this money, flight this money back to their original university. So all we will get in India is a mediocre, third-rate universities coming to India with the principal objective of making profit. Pratap Banu Mehta argues one more thing. He says there are wealthy individuals in India who have the money to establish top-level institutes in India, top-level private institutes in India. But we face a problem. The problem is with the regulator, UGC, University Grants Commission. It does not give autonomy to these private institutes. It basically restricts these private universities, interferes with their private functioning, dictating how you should decide your admission criteria, what should you be teaching, who are you recruiting. So if you are not providing private universities in India autonomy, why are you then providing autonomy to foreign universities to come to India? So we could have established top-notch educational institutes, universities in India by the wealthy people of India, but they are scared of investing in India because there is no regulatory clarity, because there is unnecessary interference by the UGC in private institutes, in private universities. So Pratap Banu Mehta basically says this is like a hypocrisy. Autonomy to foreign, freedom for foreign universities, but chains for Indian domestic universities. That's the problem. And at the same time, Dr. Pratap Banu Mehta argues that one thing that we can be very thankful to UGC is that at least they have admitted, at least they have been honest in admitting. And what is the honest admission? That previously we thought public universities, public educational institutes established by the government will solve the problem of education in India. Then we gave up. We said public institutes will not solve the problem of education in India. So we will now rely with private educational institutions. So then we asked the private educational institutions to come up and thought that the state will give up on its constitutional obligation in providing good quality education to the people. Now we are putting the ball in the court of private universities. And now we have given up on them as well. We say neither the government, not the private universities, but now these foreign universities will help solve the problem of education in India. Pratap Banu Mehta argues that inviting foreign companies or foreign universities in India, it's not like McDonald's. It's not like you can replicate the franchisee model of McDonald's and claim that we can establish same quality burgers in different parts of the world. It doesn't happen because research is important. Educational pedagogy is important. That will not be ensured by these foreign universities in India. Because all we will get mediocre, third-rate or lower quality foreign institutes entering into India. And Pratap Banu Mehta says this is not University Grants Commission. It is University Gimmick Commission. That is what you need to know from this topic. Can foreign universities set up campuses in India now? Is this clear? Any questions as of now? No questions? Okay. Let's look at another topic, the potential of generative AI, creating media with simple text prompts. Now listen to me carefully. Alexa, play old romantic songs of Muhammad Rafi. What is this? Artificial intelligence. In a sense, data is fed already. That these are the songs of Muhammad Rafi, Mukesh, Kishore Kumar. These songs are then broken into various genres or various tastes. These are peppy songs, these are sad songs, these are emotional songs, these are devotional songs, these are patriotic songs. So whenever I am giving an order, Alexa, play old romantic songs of Muhammad Rafi, data is already fed. But using artificial intelligence, it is now playing the old romantic songs of Muhammad Rafi. Similarly, hey Siri, call mom, calling mom mobile. What is this? Data is fed. That Siri, you can make a phone call and this is the contact list. If the directive is call mom, you will have to call mom mobile and then the call will be done. But the data is already fed. Now imagine a situation, you are a student. I'm trying to make it very simple for you to understand. Imagine, for example, you are a student. You take the Hindu Newspaper Analysis, you attend our live classes as well, or you attend the learning on the tablet learning program as well. So we give you information, we give you data, we make your concepts clear. When the UPSC asks you a question in the examination, based on the information that we provide you, you can come up with your own answer. And that is what is happening today. Generative AI, generative artificial intelligence. That means now, whatever data is fed to these systems, based on that data, they can come up with an original song, original article, original blog, original images. And there are two entities which are gaining a lot of popularity today. One is ChatGPT and the other is DALL-E. Basically, ChatGPT, the question can be in the prelims examination. ChatGPT is in the news. What does GPT stand for? It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. So basically, you can go on this AI platform, ChatGPT, and then ask, type, write an essay on morning walk. It will give you an essay on morning walk. Write a review of this famous Bollywood movie Sholay. It will write an article, it will write a review of this movie. Or show me a teddy bear working on artificial intelligence, but based on the, let's say, based on the techniques of 1990, it will come up with an image. So generating original content such as songs, articles, blogs, ChatGPT. Generating images using artificial intelligence, that is DALL-E. And there are some who say that the future is bright for these generative AIs, and others say this is a challenge. What is the challenge? What are the advantages? Let's have an understanding. But listen to me carefully. If it is possible, if at all it is possible, please memorize this entire article. Memorize this entire article, and definitely there will be a question in upcoming mains examination on this. And you can reproduce this, regurgitate the same arguments which are given in this article in your examination. If possible, memorize this article. But what are the issues? There are some people who say it will lead to loss of jobs. The similar argument which was made when computers were introduced in India for the first time. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. In the late 1980s, computers were to be introduced in India. Rajiv Gandhi was criticized, saying if you're bringing in computers, what will happen to our employees? They will lose their livelihood. They will lose their employment. So computers will start doing the job which is done by the manual workers. it will lead to loss of jobs. But instead, it led to an increase in jobs because of technological advancement, because of the introduction of computers. Similarly, with the introduction of this generative AI, now there are people who say, why would somebody hire a content writer? We can ask ChatGPT to write original content. We can ask ChatGPT to write a review. So people will lose their jobs because of this generative AI. But it is going to lead to an increase in jobs as well. Why? Because then in top niche artificial intelligence, machine learning, we will generate niche jobs, high-paying jobs as well. There are others who say students will stop working on their assignments. I gave an assignment to a student, write an essay on morning walk. All he has to do or she has to do, type in, write an essay on morning walk on ChatGPT and come up with an assignment. So basically it will reduce the time or maybe deviate the students from their assignments. But ChatGPT and this generative AI is just like internet. Internet in the sense, there are some positives of internet, some disadvantages as well. It depends on how you're using these devices, how you're using this technology to further your goal. There can be disadvantage. For example, deep fake. Deep fakes can be created. It's me with my face, my voice, but these are not my words. Someone else is making a video, people assume that it is me, same voice, same delivery, but deep fake, it is somebody else. So using these artificial intelligence technologies, it can be advantageous to the society, it can be disadvantageous as well. But using generative AI, what can we do? We can basically, there are tens and thousands of pages of, let's say, a judgment of the court, let's say legal documents. We can feed this document to the system and then ask the system to come up with a concise, proper 50, 100 word summary of these massive documents. That's the advantage. Social media companies can ask DAL-E to change the logo of its company based on its philosophy. So basically, with less investment, people can make the best use of these generative AI technologies. The most important point is, using generative AI, we can also use to improve machine learning algorithms by generating new training data. We have to feed the system with data. Based on this data, it will come up with its response. We can use ChatGPT to generate new set of training data, which we can feed to these machine language algorithms to make these algorithms work better. That's the advantage of generative AI. So it's like a matchstick, which you can use to light the house, which you can use to burn down the house as well. But this is a very important topic, relevant for your prelims as well as mains examination. So please keep note of this topic. Any example of deepfake? For example, just search on YouTube, deepfake of Barack Obama. Deepfake can be, for example, I am Vladimir Putin. I'm not Vladimir Putin, but the display is Vladimir Putin, the words are of Mr. Putin, and I'm announcing a chemical war on Ukraine. Although it's not the video of Mr. Putin, but it can be using artificial intelligence, we can generate a deep fake of Mr. Putin announcing a chemical war on Ukraine. So basically we can ensure or we can facilitate a chemical war between the two countries based on deep fakes. So it has some positive points, it has some negative points as well, just like internet, which has some positive points, some negative as well. Great, okay. Now let's look at the last topic. Despite Supreme Court order, single women are denied abortion. Till 1971, there was no law regulating abortion in India. 1971, the law was passed, known as Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Pregnancy can be terminated, but on medical grounds. And the law said pregnancy can be terminated up to 20 weeks. But then there was a demand from a large section of the society that we need to modify this law, we need to increase the time limit. And then 2 years ago, a law was passed which allowed for termination of pregnancy up to 24 weeks. But here, up to 20 weeks and 20 to 24 weeks. Pregnancy up to 20 weeks can be terminated on the advice of one registered medical practitioner, basically on the advice of one doctor. On what grounds? If the pregnancy is because of rape, if the pregnancy is because of loss of or misuse of contraception, if the pregnancy is causing some distress to the mother or causing some abnormalities in the fetus. On various grounds, pregnancy up to 20 weeks can be terminated on the advice of a single registered medical practitioner, one doctor, and any woman. Now this is what this newspaper article is all about. Any woman can terminate her pregnancy, which means married woman as well as unmarried woman. But pregnancy between 20 to 24 weeks can be terminated on the advice of two registered medical practitioners, but only for a specialized category, a special category of women. This women should be married. A married woman alone can terminate her pregnancy if the pregnancy is about 20 weeks up to 24 weeks. Which basically means the law, which was amended 2 years ago, made a distinction between a married woman and an unmarried woman. All women, whether married or unmarried, can terminate their pregnancy up to 20 weeks. But only a married woman can terminate her pregnancy, can get her pregnancy terminated between 20 to 24 weeks. Matter went to the court. And in June, July last year in 2022, the Supreme Court said this distinction between a married and an unmarried woman, according to these rules, is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court gave this right to terminate pregnancy to all women, regardless of her marital status. But then people are not aware of this. Those who are the legal enforcers, police, they are not aware of this. And that is what this newspaper article says. It is making it difficult for even single women, unmarried women, to terminate pregnancy despite the fact that Supreme Court gave them this right. Why? Because people are not aware. Also because under section 30 clause 1 of Indian Penal Code, termination of pregnancy is a crime unless and until this termination of pregnancy is aligned with Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Sir, what does that mean? Let me make it simple for you to understand. In India, there was no law regulating abortion till 1971. 1971, the law was passed. Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, 1971. So pregnancy can be terminated, but on medical grounds. But till 2 years ago, the law allowed pregnancy to be terminated only up to 20 weeks, not more than that. If you had to ask for abortion beyond 20 weeks, for that you had to approach the court. Without the intervention from the court, the pregnancy cannot be terminated. But now the law says pregnancy can be terminated up to 24 weeks. If it is up to 20 weeks, one doctor's consent is required, abortion can be performed. Whether you are married or unmarried doesn't matter. But if it is abortion or termination of pregnancy between 20 to 24 weeks, you need recommendation of two registered medical practitioners And this abortion can be allowed only for a specialized category of women. One such category of women should be a married woman. If a woman is married, or if a woman is then divorced or widowed, then on these grounds, abortion can be prescribed. Termination of pregnancy can take place. Matter went to the court. The Supreme Court said this distinction between a married and an unmarried woman in these rules, it is unconstitutional. Now, up to 24 weeks, pregnancy can be terminated, whether the woman is married or unmarried, doesn't matter. But on the ground, it is still not implemented. Why? Because Supreme Court gave its verdict. But Supreme Court did not ask the government to change the rules. Rules still say that 20 to 24 weeks, abortion for unmarried women is not allowed, because rules still say this, despite the fact that Supreme Court has said something else. So today, if the police is arresting somebody, a doctor who has done this abortion, violating the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, the police does not know, is not aware that the law has been changed by the Supreme Court order. Because IPC clearly says, Indian Penal Code says, if you conduct abortion, if you terminate pregnancy, which is violative of the act, you are committing a crime. And the act still says, because it has not been modified, act still says, rules still say, because it has not been modified, rules still say only for married women, 20 to 24 weeks. That is why the column says, despite Supreme Court order, single women are denied abortion. Now, based on these topics, we have come up with 2 practice questions for your mains examination. Question number 1. Does the Constitution of India guarantee a right to shelter? Comment by citing relevant case laws. Question number 2. UGC guidelines for campuses of foreign universities in India don't herald a revolution. They are an admission of failure. Critically analyze in 250 words. That is it from our side today on today's The Hindu Newspaper Analysis. And if you have liked this video, why don't you press the like button? Let me know, encourage us with your likes, comments, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and share the links of these classes with your friends and fellow aspirants. If you have any questions, please let me know, then I'll take your leave. Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Shrikant. Thank you, Asif. Akansha, Shriya, thank you. Okay, no questions, just thank you. Thank you so much for staying with us. Have a great day ahead. Goodbye, take care.